Would you like to play a game?
So we've got the Underworld. Though the Underworld in Zelda, this is kind of my part two, whatever. It's the Underworld of the Legend of Zelda series. As I kind of said before, Legend of Zelda's has so many different creatures and so many different bad guys that they influence all the different Zelda games. They're just awesome, awesome. So like right off the bat, right? We got this guy, right? Like, oh, who's that guy? That is Zol. Zol's one of the first guys you kind of fight in the underworld. When I talk about the underworld, I'm more talking like the dungeons, the castles, the labyrinths. They're kind of more labyrinths. I just want to call them that, but the game kind of calls it the underworld, so I'll call it that. Zol, when you typically speak, unless you have like the most powerful sword, when you attack him, he actually splits into two. It's like he's kind of like two lumps, right? And when you slice him in the bottom's a little fatter lump that slices into two lumps, and he ends up kind of becoming this guy, right? So you got two of those guys kind of going around. You don't get any kind of item from him. You're like, ugh. Like he makes you do more work, and you don't get much for items, right? But he shows up sometimes. He's a little. I think he's more interesting in this game. But so this is Stalfos. He's sort of the portmanteau of Stal and Phos, meaning skeletal humanoid. Now he's in pretty much every Zelda game. I always thought he was kind of neat that he's got like the two swords. I thought it was a signature thing. But he almost immediately in any other Zelda game has like a sword and shield, and his fighting style changes. But he mostly is like the classic Jason the Argonauts, right? Kind of like battle skeleton guy, and he kind of attacks, and he's typically pretty formidable, and sometimes he shoots his sword, I guess, at least in this game. We got Goriya, right? Goriyas, they're the boomerang kings. When you take them out, they'll leave like a boomerang on the floor, and you're like, oh, what's this? And you take the boomerang, and it's like the best item in Legend of Zelda. Yep, I said it. It's like the best item because you probably just, like not in the other games per se, but it matters, no matter which Zelda game you're playing. But in Legend of Zelda, like I would throw that boomerang and it would freeze the guy, and then I could just take him out, right? Just attack, whatever. It was always my inventory item whenever something else was immediately being used. Their attacks changed little in the other games. They're like exactly the same in the Adventure of Link, the more the side-scrolling game, whatever, even then. So, we got these guys. Ooh, they're rope. They come in slow, and then they attack fast. So they always kind of attack in their vicinity, right? Oops. Well, I guess I kind of jumped to the next thing, but those guys are really great. Yeah. So another one that I like to talk about. So this is actually considered one of the scariest monsters in the series. Although he's only sort of scary, but definitely spooky though. Sort of scary in the Legend of Zelda. He gets even scarier in other games. This is the Wallmaster. It just takes you and brings you to the brings you to the beginning, basically. It can be pretty frustrating. It doesn't really do damage, but he definitely, has an effect. So Vire, he's pretty much like the more upscale version of Zol Gel, right? When you attack him, unless you get like the magic super sword or whatever, he turns into kind of a more common the Zelda series character. Keese, basically bats. It's another way of saying bats, I guess. Yeah, bats are everywhere. Bats are in all the games. This thing has red bats, but black bats, whatever. They're pretty much every game except for, I guess, Adventure of Link. Pretty sure it has bats too, but I guess it's not these bats. So, my personal favorite are the Wizzrobes. These guys are just formidable, right? They're kind of awesome. They show up, they hit you with their little thing, magic, whatever stuff, and yeah, man, they'll shoot the magic. So the bottom guys, they'll just sort of appear and then they fire at you, while the blue guy, he kind of moves along. Darknut, always strong attack. You can only attack him from the side, right? One thing that's kind of interesting to note too is, as you see on these guys' shields, there's crosses. So until Link to the Past, so basically the Legend of Zelda and the Adventures of Link, Link is like Christian. They have this like religious faith stuff. So even Link gets like a spell book that's like a Bible, right? These guys have crosses on them. Even Link has sort of like a cross on his shield too. And there's sort of like a religious undertone to the Zelda game that you don't really see in games anymore. People get a little more sensitive about that kind of stuff. But this guy's Darknut. He's considered like one of the hardest non-boss games. It's pretty burly, right? I think some of my great fun battles I've had is actually against him. Right? So we got Pole's voice. These guys, so they were actually created, it says like hates loud noises, hence the large ears. One of the things is that the original Nintendo game, or the original Nintendo, right, the original Famicom in Japan, actually had a part that you could like whistle into or blow into or whatever. I mean, their systems, but when it came to America, they kind of got rid of that. Like, if you think like the Nintendo DS, they have a similar thing, right? If you like blow on it, whatever remembers. So that is actually like totally irrelevant, like what the manual says. But even though they're strong in almost any attack, they have one weakness: arrows. I just always like that visual. Yeah. So now we get the new guy. This guy is probably also one of the most. He's probably the most feared in-game guy, at least this game. The other games, it kind of matters, but this guy's called a like. And likes is probably one of the most feared in this game. He's the one that I fear the most in this game because he steals your shield, and he's always surrounded by Wizzrobes. Wizzrobes shoot the magic at you, and you have to kind of defend yourself. Well, the like will take your shield, and all of a sudden you're vulnerable. And yeah, even though he doesn't technically do any damage, he's the guy I always have to attack first. If you ever see a like, just take him out first. He's your number one priority. Just don't get close to him, or he's going to kill you. Sorry, it's a little street noise outside. It's San Francisco. Who's next? Mummies. So this guy's called Gibdo. Sort of just classic mummy bad guy, right? Like when you have Stalfos, he's sort of your classic, guy with a skeleton with a sword. Is your classic, mummy guy. They're usually pretty strong, so they're kind of weak to fire, right? Because they're wrapped in all sorts of paper stuff, that kind of thing. Pretty straightforward. Fire, burn them later. Just other non-creature kind of bad guys too. The spike traps, you come through doorways, they kind of attack you. It's got to be sharp, or you got to be sharp to the sharp guys trying to get you. There's also Bubble, right? Bubble's kind of spooky. He's basically like this little energy ball that goes around the screen. Doesn't really say hurt you, but when he hits you, he actually takes your ability to your sword. So if you're not careful, somebody's in a room, you'll have like a like and a bubble. So like you'll lose your shield and you'll lose the ability to your sword. Like in the second act of the game, like once you beat the game, you kind of get to play it again. It's like in a game, the game's a little harder, a little different. There'll actually be a blue one and a red one. And when you get hit by the red one, you can't use your sword until you get hit by a blue one. And so that's kind of an interesting effect of the game. Yeah, it'll permanently take its use of the sword.